And welcome back, everyone. The Tata Steel Wijk Aan Zee chess tournament has reached its first rest day after 5 rounds being played, and I wanted to make this video just to give you a brief overview on what has happened until now in the tournament. It's very exciting, many upsetting results, and many very interesting games. So I just want to go through a couple of them, tell you some things about the event in general as well, since I've been here now 5 days working for Harikrishna, who is, by the way, doing pretty well in the tournament. But yeah, before that, I don't think there's much else to say. I've really enjoyed my stay in Wijk Aan Zee so far. I've also been to the bigger town next to Wijk Aan Zee, which is called Beverwijk. I was there a couple of times when the rounds were ongoing, because as you might know, when the rounds are not ongoing, I have to work as a second. So there's a lot to do in that regard. And I think I've already talked about the kind of routine in my previous video, but just wanted to give you an update on how it's going. So usually my times of working are basically all the time when the games are not ongoing. So I start preparing with Hari in the morning after breakfast. Basically, actually, the preparation starts, if we're being accurate, the preparation starts after his game has finished. So then we just go to dinner and try to relax. But then after we come back to the room, we already start checking our next opponent, and that's also the time when I will get my homework, basically, and when the player has the time to rest or has the time to sleep, basically, then usually the day for the second basically starts, or if we're being accurate, the night basically starts. For me, it was pretty okay in this tournament so far when it comes to sleep. Of course, not. It's not a vacation. We cannot call it that. So usually I work I guess around 10 or 11 we sometimes finish, the two of us, and then mostly I work until 2 or 3, if I'm lucky, until 1. And then we continue in the morning after breakfast, when we just review the files which I've worked on during the night. So that's how it goes, and that's what I said before. When the games are ongoing, I try to relax. Of course, it's not really possible to fully relax, because you want to see all the interesting games, especially from the person that you're helping, because you want the openings to work out well. And so that's how it is here. And today is the rest day, so everyone is just trying to relax. I guess a couple of people will try to look at some other places nearby, because we are in this place for quite a long time, and it's definitely nice to see some other places. But yeah, so far for all the things surrounding the tournament. Now I would like to have a look at the standings of the event. And as you can see, so this is the master section. Abdusattorov Norberg is leading together with Pragg. They are both on 4 out of 5 points. And both of them have been playing really strong. So I think both of them are in very good shape. I will also show you a couple of games from, I think I prepared some games from Pragg, maybe also from Abdusattorov. I'm not entirely sure now, but yeah, they've been playing really well. Abdusattorov, as you can see, drew 2 games and won against Mendonca, Warmerdam, and his last game he won against Jordan van Foreest. And Pragg drew his first game against Abdusattorov, then won 3 games in a row. Firstly, unfortunately, against Harikrishna Pentala, where he played a nice game, which we're going to have a look at later. Then he won against Erigaisi, also another very nice game, which we're also going to check out. Then he won against Mendonca, and in the 5th round he drew against Max Warmerdam. And Gukesh, the current world champion, had, I think, a bit of a bumpy start against Giri, who was completely losing at some point, which we're also going to check out later. Then he made 3 draws, and in the last round, so in the 5th round, he managed to win a very nice game against his world championship second, Vincent Keimer. Vladimir Fedoseev is kind of a surprise in this event, especially like if you look at the last 2 games, because he was, I would say, under pressure in both of them. And he started the tournament off very solidly, by drawing his first 3 games. And yeah, as we will see, his game against both Erigaisi and Caruana were both very shocking. So we're gonna have a look at that later on. Harikrishna Pentala, the person I'm working for here, has a very solid tournament so far. In the first round, he won a very nice game against Arjun Erigaisi. And second round, unfortunately, he lost to Pragg, who played a very nice game, which we're gonna check out later. Then a solid draw against Mendonca, and then he won a nice game against Warmerdam, which we're gonna check out later as well. And his last game he drew against Wijk. Yeah, Fabi lost his previous game to Fedoseev, so it's gonna be quite unpleasant for him to come back from that very unfortunate result. And yeah, the rest of the players, Wijk on 50%. All draws so far. Vincent lost his previous match to Gukesh, also on 50% because he managed to beat Leon Mendonca. And yeah, I guess, yeah, what else can I say? Arjun Erigaisi has had a very unlucky event. Hari played a very nice game against him, and I think he won very deservedly. But against especially against Fedoseev, the game was just pretty unlucky overall. Also against Giri, he had very good winning chances. So I hope that Arjun is gonna fight back. As you can see, he's already on minus 21 elo points, which these top players minus 21 is quite a lot. Like it's very hard even to get to 2800. Okay, very hard is an understatement. It's like I cannot even imagine what it takes to get to 2800. As you can see, Arjun is on 2801. And it's just painful that you worked so hard and played so many games, had to win so many games to reach that level, and now he kind of has to work again very hard to reach that level again. So I really hope that he's gonna get there again very soon, because he's just a very interesting and very strong, very hardworking player as well. So now I wanted to have a look at the games. Let me see. Hopefully it works. Yeah. So that's the first round, which Giri unfortunately lost to Gukesh. And here we jump into the moment where basically the game turned around. So in the opening, Gukesh sacrificed a piece for 2 pawns, which turned out not to be entirely correct. But then both players had their chances. Gukesh was at some point equal. At some point he was lost. But here, when both players were under severe time pressure on move 33, Gukesh has played the move h2 to h3, and Giri here would have had a very nice way to basically finish the game on the spot. But instead of that, he unfortunately blundered, and instead of winning, he was all of a sudden losing. And one thing I want to point out in general is what I also noticed myself, like if you watch these events with the computer, it's just so easy to critique the people. Like you often underestimate what it actually means to like sit in front of the board. The seconds are ticking down, and it's just very hard to see these things, which usually if you would have like 5 or 10 minutes on the clock, I think every of the participants in the tournament would spot it. But this matter of time is just so tough, and also the nerves. If you're sitting on the board and the seconds are running down, it's very easy to underestimate. And therefore, I just wanted to say, I often see people commenting in live chats and so on, like, why didn't he find the engine says it's just winning? But it's simply not that simple. And at the end of the day, everyone here is human as well, at least somewhat human. And so yeah, therefore it's just not always easy. So take it easy on the players. They're the best for a reason, and yeah, in some cases even they cannot find the best ways, especially if time is ticking down. So in this position, Giri, it was Giri to move, and maybe while I was rambling about some things, you managed to find the win already, but it's actually a very, very nice one. And yeah, Giri here unfortunately played, yeah, he did play bishop e4, which is the correct move. And after rook takes f2, knight takes f2, king g1, now here was the moment, basically. So here it's black to move and win. By the way, after bishop e4, white has to react, of course, somehow. Black is threatening to take here with the bishop. So he has to take here, knight f2, king g1, and here Giri played queen b6, which allows white to simplify into an endgame after queen f6 check takes, and after takes here, this pawn is just too strong, and after d6 here, here Giri resigned. So what else could he have done? Instead of queen b6, there was a very nice win, and I think what Giri missed was knight g4. I'm sure he saw this move. So now black is threatening to take on g2. He cannot take on e4 with the bishop because now it's checkmate on h2. And maybe what he missed, what also I didn't see at first when I wasn't checking it with the computer, is that after rook takes e4, black has only one move, not to be losing, but to be winning immediately. And it's the very hidden move, queen b6 check. All other moves, like if you give some check on the first rank, white can simply block it, and then there's nothing for black here anymore. And yeah, he has to give this check first, so that the king has to move, and if it moves here, there's checkmate on f2, and if it moves to h1, then queen b1 comes, and now white doesn't have bishop f1 anymore. So yeah, that was the first game I wanted to show you guys. The second game is between, or at least a brief moment of the game, Caruana against Jordan van Foreest. And this position after bishop g3, which is like one of the very standard London positions, I would say. Here, Jordan played the very new, at least completely new move to me, knight h6, which I just wanted to mention, because it's just such a creative idea. And yeah, I was quite fascinated by the idea. I think in general, black plays knight f6, when the knight often reaches e5, and then black cannot capture here anymore. Like, let's say knight d2, short castle, and white often goes for things like knight e5, when black cannot capture, because then there's the double attack on the bishop and the knight. And with the knight on h6, this is not that effective anymore, because like if we have a look at the same line, basically, let's just put some moves on the board, knight e5 is not that effective anymore, because black can sometimes even take here, and then the knight will come to f5, and there is no double attack. Also, black, I think, has some ideas with f6, just to control the square on e5, and also black has some ideas even with some c4, closing everything off, and then even f5, which at least the computer was suggesting in some positions similar to this. So after knight h6, Fabio played bishop d3, short castle, knight d2, b6, and after a couple of moves, black actually had a very nice position. And the moment which I want to jump to was at this move, where Jordan played bishop b6, and now bishop e3 is maybe what he underestimated, and now we reach an endgame which surprisingly is already very, very bad for black. Like at first when I saw it, I thought it cannot be too bad. Black is only a pawn down, and this pawn on e5 is very weak. Pawn on e3 is doubled, so I thought it should be somewhat still close to draw, but in fact it's very hard to hold. Rook b5 is coming, and yeah, Fabio won in a couple of moves only because the king will activate, and all of white's pieces are just very active. So he could have made a draw more easily here. Instead of bishop b6, queen b4 would have been the correct way to do it. And the whole point is, if he takes here on c4, b takes c4, now f6, and now the pawn on e5 will probably drop. Now I was thinking what happens after queen b4, rook b4, b takes c4, because I was a bit worried about something like this here, rook c1. But I guess I can take on f1. Just be careful that if you take here, probably black will lose a piece. But rook f4, rook c6, probably something like bishop b6 should be very, very comfortable for black. Keep in mind I'm without an engine here, so take everything with a grain of salt, but this looks like victory. So queen b4 would have equalized here. Next game I want to have a look at is, at least briefly, the game between Harikrishna and Pragg from round 2. And Pragg played this very very modern line with knight f6. More standard approaches is to go either e6 or g6 with more standard Rossolimo positions. But he went for knight f6, which has seen quite a lot of popularity recently. Also, it was played in the candidates, I think, by none other than Fabiano himself. And it often reaches similar positions to this line with g6. For example, after knight f6, white can take on c6, which is one of the lines, and just go d3. And now black could go for g6, and also this move bishop g4 is there. Two very interesting options. So this is certainly playable for black. Knight c3 is probably the most critical option, which also Harikrishna played. Pragg went queen c7, short castle, knight d4, rook e1, and here black has played around with many different moves like e5 has been played a couple of times, but a6 is still the main move, bishop f1. And also here, this move which Pragg played, knight g4, has been seen as kind of out of date, I would say, but I think that he found some very interesting ideas to make it playable again. More recently, people have tried like d6 was one move. I think e5 was one move as well. But he went for knight g4 and the g3, take, knight e5, queen e2, e6. Hari went for d3 and it was a playable position. And later on, I'll jump to one more moment, or two more moments actually. Pragg played a very nice game. Instead, the main move is b3, which is quite an unstandard way of playing the position, I would say. And the point here is that white wants to go bishop b2 and then knight d1, knight to e3, and then c3 to d4. So not an easy plan to play over the board, for example, something like this. And I'm assuming that Pragg had something interesting in mind here. Like I saw that the computer proposes moves like h5, and after knight d1, even ideas with g5, just to clamp down the pawn structure on the king side with g4, for example. So this might have been what he had in mind. So it turns out this line is actually quite playable for black. Hari went for d3, and now we got pretty balanced position. And later on, I want to jump to this moment here. Pragg played c4, c3, and he took here. And here, I think Pragg made a very, very nice decision by going f6. At least from a practical point of view, I think that f6 is a fantastic move because it puts a lot of pressure on white. Even though the computer still says it's 0.00 or 0.1 to be exact, I think it becomes very unpleasant all of a sudden. Because the f file is opening up, the pawn on f4 is very weak, and somehow all of white's pieces are a bit strange. Rook on c3 is often in danger to run into bishop b4. Also, there's always this trick with bishop c5, possibly pinning queen and the king. So Hari understandably already made a mistake with g6 because he just wanted to keep this f file closed. Instead, I think the computer wanted to take here and then take on b5, but just the whole white's king position is threatening to open up. And I think something like queen b7 maybe was there. Some position like this could make sense, I guess. And yeah, still these pawns here look to be pretty weak. Pawn a2 is also hanging. So Hari played g6, and now I just want to jump to one more moment later on. Hari defended really well, and around this moment I thought that he's gonna make a draw. But here, around this moment here, rook c6, it was very, very important to understand that the bishop endgame is a draw, which wasn't easy at all to grasp, I think, during a game. He played rook b7, after which, with rooks on the board, it's lost because the pawn on f5 will fall. Again, he made a mistake, by the way, here. Rook h3 would have won. But what I wanted to say was Hari still didn't exchange the rooks, and then he just lost because the pawn on b4 also fell later on. What I wanted to say was, let's just go to this moment here. This endgame with this bishop endgame is a draw, but only for one reason. White needs to set up one fortress, which he can do by playing king f2 to king g3. So the whole point is, let's say black goes king e5, king g3, and now bishop b5. Just avoiding bishop e2, bishop b5, and now white can even give this pawn on f5, and now just sit on b7 and on c8, and yeah, black cannot make any progress. If bishop e2, king f2 is important. Now the bishop cannot go here because the pawn on a6 is hanging. The bishop goes back, and then the king goes back as well. And whenever the king runs over to the queen side, let's say king e5, white is just in time, because after king takes b4, white has bishop takes a6, and it's a draw in the end. So that was quite unfortunate, but still, I think Pragg played a very nice game, putting a lot of pressure on Harikrishna. So definitely a deserved win for Pragg as well. Next game, also fantastic game by Pragnananda against Erigaisi from round 3. And this was one line of the Catalan, which also happened in the next game we're going to have a look at. And here Pragg played a very interesting move, knight e1, which I wanted to point out, because it is a very interesting sideline, and usually white plays something like bishop b2, then knight b3, c4, opening up the lines for the bishop. When black is fairly solid, there's a lot of theory here, and yeah, nothing much has changed here. Black tends to hold a draw fairly easily here. But Pragg came up with this still quite rare idea, knight e1, and the idea is just to immediately open up the diagonal for the bishop, and the knight on d3 will harass the bishop on c5. And yeah, it's just a pretty new approach of playing the position. At least it's not as common as the line with bishop b2 and knight b3. And Pragg immediately got a very nice position. Arjun was obviously not that familiar with the line. He went bishop d7 instead. Something like rook d8 is probably better, and keep the bishop on c8 for now. But still, the position doesn't look that comfortable for black after something like knight d3, bishop e7, knight e4. Black still has to be pretty accurate to fully equalize here. He went bishop d7, now rook b1, knight a5, and now Pragg got exactly what he wanted. He managed to improve his pawn structure. And after bishop c6, takes, now very instructive. Black just has a long-term weakness on the king side with both of these pawns being basically isolated. And Pragg just won a very nice game here. He put the rooks on the a file, and at some point Arjun just collapsed, which is understandable in these types of positions. Also here I was impressed by the idea knight c1. Pragg is bringing the knight from a2 to c3, then possibly to b5. I think that was another very nice idea by him. And at some point, yeah, Arjun crackled because of the pressure here. Rook a2. He can still defend with a4, but it's just not easy at all. For example, rook b2, rook back to a1 looks unpleasant with this pin here. I don't even see how black can do anything about it. Also, allowing the rook to d6 doesn't seem natural at all. So yeah, Pragg deservedly then managed to win again, maneuvering around all his pieces, and at some point he won the pawn on f7 here. I think that was the kind of the final blunder. Knight b5, attacking the rook, and then he picked up the pawn on f7. So another very nice game. Next game, Harikrishna against Warmerdam, which was probably one of the most exciting ones, especially for me to watch, since my boss was playing. And it was the exact same line as we saw in the previous game. But here, Warmerdam played the very, very nice opening idea b5, which I was familiar with because Harikrishna himself had a game here in 2022 against Surya Ganguly in the World Rapid or Blitz Championship. I don't remember that anymore. I think it was Blitz. And it is quite a risky line for black, but actually 2 days ago, I checked it with the computer while they were playing, and it was very hard for white to come up with anything, especially here, basically. And yeah, obviously they prepared it very well. Warmerdam has Jonas Bjerre with him here as a second, and I think they just did a very good job at analyzing this line, and I'm quite sure that more people will go to this. So the whole point is, the main move here, which Erigaisi played, is c3, just trying to worsen white's pawn structure. But b5 is basically a completely new idea. There are still only like 10, 20 games, I believe. And black just wants to keep this pawn on c4. And there are basically two ideas here for white how to play. The first one is, which Hari played, with a4. The second one is to go knight e5. This is probably the most critical approach, knight e5 right away. But it turns out black is actually fine after knight e5, bishop a8. And now I think that king e7 was the move, knight e4 is forced, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and I think now f5 was the move. And after bishop g2, let me think, I think knight g4 was important to make white play e3, and then something like this even to go back. I think that was the line. And black has very good compensation. A knight could come to d3, and then pawn to e5, pawn to e4, just to fix the knight on d3. Also pawn e5 and then f4 to open up the diagonal for the bishop. And seemed like black was doing fairly well here. The other approach which Hari played is a4, and now bishop a6 has to be played. A6 is something black cannot do, because after takes he cannot take back because the rook on a8 is hanging. So he played bishop a6, and now Hari played knight g5. Which also he did against Ganguly in their game. And here Ganguly played rook c8, which is a blunder. And but Max was familiar with the line. He played knight d5, which is the top move by the computer. Still, knight g5 is not the only move. Even here, now knight e5 makes sense with the inclusion a4, bishop a6. But again, black is actually pretty okay after takes b4. It looks pretty unpleasant even for white, because these pawns are so fast, and all of black's pieces are just in perfect positions here. So I can fully understand why Hari didn't want to go there. Instead he went knight g5, just opening up this diagonal for the bishop, and after knight e4, knight d5, knight d4, bishop b4, he went for knight takes f7. When now it's just completely escalating. I think the best for white is to go knight c3 here. When after takes, I think b4 it goes, take here, take here, take here. If you go a bit further, white is probably has a bit better position, but still black is probably very close to holding a draw here as well. But Hari went knight f7, which is extremely interesting. He just sacrificed a piece for 2 pawns, and after king f7, which is forced, knight g5, and now he took on e6, and now black cannot take back because of bishop d5, and he will lose the knight here. If the king goes here, then I can take here, take on c4, and with this discovered check, white is winning back the piece with 2 pawns up. So knight c7, Max was still in preparation. A takes b5, bishop b7. Now, I think a takes b5 could have been the first move where he was out of book. One other line was knight d4, which was a very critical approach as well. Now white is threatening e4, pushing away the knight, and then even e5. Keep in mind the king on f6 is actually quite weak in all of those positions. And after knight d4, I think the only way for black to be not significantly worse was rook a8, a takes b5, and now bishop c8. This is what black had to see, and all of a sudden black is somehow holding on. Again, bishop b7 is probably failing due to e4, and if the knight moves, then something like e5, and the bishop is hanging on b7. That's why the bishop probably has to go to c8 here. But Hari took first, and now he has to go back bishop b7, because after takes, I think there's bishop d5, and in the end, the bishop on b5 is hanging. So I went bishop b7, now knight d4. Again, not by computer, probably not the best move, even though later on they all went down to 0-0 here. Knight g5 is the other option. And here black had also, I think he had to go h6, knight e4, king f7, and now white was holding the balance like with bishop d2. He's down a piece for 2 pawns, but still black's pieces are somewhat uncoordinated. Also there's this knight d6 in the air, as always, pawn on e7 is a bit weak, so white has full compensation here for the piece. Hari went knight d4, king f7 is forced. Max spent a lot of time here, which maybe he should have saved it, even though it does make sense to spend this time if you've just gotten out of book, basically. But it's the only move that doesn't lose on the spot, because otherwise e4 and e5 will come. So king f7 happened, now rook a4, and now Max played c3. In general, the position, I checked it with Hari after it on the board, and on the board it seemed like black has to be extremely careful in general, because white's pieces are all very active. Black's king is somewhat weak, and especially this bishop on b7 is just always in the eye of the bishop on g2, so it's very hard for him to just unpin this knight here. He went c3, which is still a fine move. I think instead the computer preferred bishop d6 or bishop c5. Yeah, bishop d6 was the point, and now he should not take on c4, because now knight b6, when black is able to finally exchange this passive bishop on b7 for the active bishop on g2. So after bishop d6, yeah, Hari told me that knight f3 was his intention, and then to take on c4, when still it looks like white has very good compensation, to say the least. Max went c3, and now Hari played rook d3, which I think was another fantastic choice, because first of all, the pawn on c3 will be targeted, and second of all, white has this idea of rook f3 with check in many cases, when then you will see that the king on f7 again is actually quite weak. He played a5, and after b takes c3, now he blundered with bishop takes c3. Instead, rook ac8 would have been the way to go. And now after bishop d2, only now to take on c3. Again, it's very complicated. This is the line the computer gave here, and yeah, I even had this with Hari later on the board. It was a very nice perpetual. So bishop d2, bishop takes c3, rook f3 check, king g6, knight c6. And now in this case, white has to go for the perpetual because he cannot do anything here, because after king h6, the bishop on d2 is hanging, and therefore there are none of these checks working, because black can always take on d2. So that was a very nice draw, but he had to find this, and instead he went bishop takes c3, and here Hari gave back the favor with rook f3 check. Instead, knight c6 would have been winning, which he also calculated, but the thing which he somewhat had the wrong evaluation, I think it was bishop takes c6, b takes c6, knight b6, rook f4, bishop f6, and now you needed to find after a3 you needed to see rook d7. I think that was the whole point, which this was the move I think he told me that he missed. The point is that after a2 there's bishop d5 check, and then you can take on a2, and I think what we're analyzing was, let me think, it was king g6, and I think rook takes f6, now g takes f6, bishop takes a2, maybe with a different move order. I think this was it. Yeah, bishop a2, rook takes a2, and now rook takes a7, when we came to the conclusion that this should be fairly easily winning for white. So this was the best line here. But you needed to see all of this with rook d7, otherwise this pawn is just queening. So that was a very nice sequence at the end. Instead he went rook f3 check, and now Max blundered with king g6. Instead king e8 would have been the move, when again the position is very, very complicated. I think Hari was telling about this line, bishop b7, knight e4, bishop takes a8. Now the point is the rook cannot take on a8 because the king is on e8, and the position is just completely unclear. It's balanced here. Instead king g6 was played. Now knight c6, probably the move which Max missed, bishop f6, and now Hari had a very nice finish with knight e5 check. The point is, if black takes, there was a checkmate somewhere, rook g4 check, king h5, and there was something very beautiful here, but I don't remember how Hari wanted to finish the game. I guess you could take here, and here, I guess you can just take everything here, rook d5. But where is the mate in the end? Let me think. There was a very beautiful mate at some point. Bishop e5, rook g4, king h5. I think he just wants to take everything, yeah? Rook d6, king h5, and yeah, then mate will follow very shortly. Hari told me about some beautiful checkmate here, but I somewhat cannot. Maybe it was this one that this would have been a very nice mate with rook h3. That could be, which is a very unstandard way of finishing the game. Anyway, that was quite deep. Next game, which I already pointed out before, Erigaisi against Fedoseev, which Fedoseev won, which was very surprising because Erigaisi had a very promising position. At first, it started out with Fedoseev actually having the better position, but Arjun having a lot of attacking chances. At this moment, Fedoseev played king h8, which is not the best way to proceed. Instead, knight c5 would have been best, which Fedoseev also pointed out in the press conference. Did occur to him, but I think his own words that he was lazy to calculate what happened here, which I can totally understand because it looks very dangerous for black as well. Like f5 is the move, and now after knight takes d3, queen takes d3, f2 is the only move which doesn't lose for black. And the point after rook g2, now he takes on f5, and now queen takes e5, when I guess the point is now he cannot take anything on g7, because then at some point the pawn is already in f2, so it could have chances to promote in some instances. So he should have gone for this. Instead, king h8 was played, bishop c2, a strong move by Erigaisi, and now Fedoseev played c5, and the position very quickly shifted into white's favor. In this position, knight h4, that was played, and yeah, around here it went wrong for Arjun. Objectively, position is winning here. I think the best was to take here and then to kick out this knight on c4 by going b3. And then at some point the pawn on f5 will drop, and these connected pawns are just way faster than these two. But instead Arjun took on f5, and here he committed the very unlucky blunder, knight takes f5, and I guess what he missed was, I guess it's the only explanation, that after queen takes f5, which Fedoseev played, take back, rook g3, hg3, now knight e3, and black is not even just winning back the exchange, but he's just winning a full rook, which you don't often see, because usually when you fork two rooks with a knight, they can kind of protect each other in one move. But here it's just so unlucky that you cannot protect both rooks at the same time, because they're just disconnected. And yeah, he just it's just a piece up now, and therefore he won the game pretty soon after that. And next game featuring Fedoseev and Fabiano, which was in the 5th round. Something I would say similar happened. The end game, which we have in front of us here now, Fabi was black and Fedoseev was white, and I would say that black has basically what you could call a risk-free position. He got the slightly better chances. Position is surely a draw if white manages to defend well. But it has happened to all of us already that you have some position like this and you really want to win it. And at some point, especially if you're playing against an opponent like Fedoseev, who is always putting up a very good resistance and then even setting up his own ideas, and then at some point the favor can shift, which we saw happen in this game. And usually I think out of 100 games, Fabi would not lose this game in 99 games of that, maybe even more. But unfortunately, it was yesterday was just this 1% game for him. And let's have a look how it happened. So Black could try bishop c6 in this position. He played g5, bishop c6 with the idea of bishop a4, when white would have to kick out this rook on c8 with bishop a6. And probably Black doesn't have anything better here than repeating. I'm just trying to show how careful white has to be, and in many cases he just really has to go for the repetition, otherwise he would just be lost. But Fabi played g5, which I thought looks logical. He wants to gain space on the king side. But after king f2, he played e5, and now g5 doesn't really fit into the position, because now Fedoseev played knight f1, and now all of a sudden the square on f5 is very weak. So if you wanted to play the plan with e5, it would have made more sense to go e5 here, and after king f2 now to try to improve the position somehow, but probably not with g5. Maybe you can try to gain some space with h5, h4, but still position looks very solid for white, so it's not going to be easy to have any breakthrough here at all for Black. Another idea actually before that I thought was to push d5 at some point for Black as well, but probably white will just bring the king anyway. And also here I don't really see what to do. Like, the computer gives some advantage here in general, but I think like if white defends normally, it should not be, Black shouldn't be able to create that many chances. Like also after e5, immediately king f2, I don't really see how Black can create any serious winning chances. But he went g5 and then e5, and now Fedoseev spotted knight f1, which is a nice move, bringing the knight to e3. Now Fabi traded everything on c2, bishop c8, bishop d3, and now the endgame is just completely balanced. But somewhere around here, I think maybe here already Fedoseev was trying to play for something. I think that knight e5 was maybe around here it really went into the wrong direction. White shouldn't take because king c5 wins the knight, but Fedoseev went bishop b3. Instead of knight e5, I think around here I thought Black could go just f6, just avoiding e5, and if bishop b3 down, maybe knight e7. But still, already here it looks like something went wrong for Black, because white has this nice center, and also the knight on c5 is just a very nice piece. So even though this is still objectively equal, I would probably pick white here already. He went knight e5 and put the knight to b6 to defend the pawn like that, and now king c3, a5, stopping the king to enter on b4. And the final blunder came, it was here, when Fabi played bishop g2. 41st move, which makes it even more painful, because he did have the time. It was 41st move, so he could have spent some time here, but he just blundered after bishop g2 that there's e5. And instead of bishop g2 here, it was already quite tough for Black to find the defense, but I'm sure if he would have spent some time, he would have probably found a g4, I think is what the computer says, and after takes here, take on e4, and that somehow it's a draw. Don't ask me why, but it's already quite hard. But he went bishop g2, and now e5 happened. He took on e5, and now the whole issue is he cannot take on f3 because knight d4 just picks up the bishop on f3. Also, if he takes on f3 right away, he takes f6, and now this pawn will be too strong. He can, I guess, defend for now with bishop h5, but after knight takes a5, picking up this pawn, and white is just a pawn up for now. It should be winning. So Fabi took b4, and Fedoseev managed to convert perfectly after that. Just pushed the pawn, and at some point he won the piece, gave back the piece, and now Fabi resigned because the king will come, and then white is just an extra pawn up, and Black's king is too far away. So yeah, that was all I wanted to say for now. 5 rounds have been played, and we have seen many interesting games. By the way, one more thing I wanted to maybe point out is the standings in the challengers group as well. So there were also many interesting games there. Currently, Evan Lamy is leading with 4 out of 5 points. He played many nice games. If you guys want to see some games of the challengers as well, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I think this video is going to be a bit too long. But there were many very cool games. You can check out Ervin's game against Divya Deshmukh from, I think it was round 5, which was very beautiful. And overall, many cool games in the challenges as well, and many fighting games specifically. So Erwin is leading the tournament with 4 out of 5. He's followed by Nguyen Taidevan, who had a very narrow escape yesterday against Edis Gurel. And then Benjamin Bock with 3.5 out of 5. Then we have a couple of people of 3 out of 5. By the way, I want to point out Lu Miaoui, hopefully I pronounced it correctly, who won a fantastic game against Frederik Svane. Also nice game against Nogabek Kazibek. So she's just, I think, a very big hope in the Chinese chess community, and especially in the female chess community. She's only, I think, 13 years old, and yeah, International Master 2430. I think she's going to be one of the very big stars in chess in the years to come. So definitely watch out for her. Of course, there are many other prodigies as well here, like Edis Gurel. I think he's also around 13, 14, and already 2600 plus. Aydin Soleimani, also still quite young. And of course, there's also Ora Faustino, who didn't have such a great event so far. He won a nice game against Irina Bulmaga, but otherwise he has been struggling a little bit. Same can be said again about Bulmaga, who managed to make 1 draw out of 5 games. I hope she's gonna manage to score some wins as well. But yeah, definitely also very interesting to follow the challengers. But yeah, guys, that will be it for today's video. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and leave a like and subscribe if you did. Also, please give me any feedback and suggestions what else you would like to see for the following videos. I'll try to keep you updated. I think the next rest day is going to be after the 8th round. So 3 more rounds to be played, and then we have a rest day, I think. And yeah, I'm going to continue working. It's going to be a lot to do, and hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in the following videos. Take care.